Hey guys, in today's lesson video, I'm going to make a very important lesson video and talk about some of the bad coaching kind of tips that everyday golfer hears. The one thing I want to talk about in today's lesson video is a cupped wrist position and a bowed lead wrist position, because so many often we're taught, we see on YouTube, we see on Instagram, we see golf coaches saying that a cupped wrist position means that we have an open club face and we're in a weak position. And they consider that a bowed lead wrist means that we're slightly shut and we have a strong position. And that is so far from the truth unless you have a picture perfect grip. And of course, not every single golfer has a picture perfect neutral grip. So if you're in a neutral position, grip wise, and if you have a cupped wrist position, yes, the club face is open. And if you have a neutral perfect grip and we have a bowed lead wrist, yes, the club face is shut. But that's once again only if we have a perfect grip, which most everyday golfers don't have. So if you want a perfect grip, I'll make a separate video for that. But in today's lesson video, it's about having the correct matchups for your current grip and your wrist angles at the top. Because so many oftentimes, if we just hear that a cupped wrist position is bad and it's open and it's weak, we're never going to get into a cupped position. So if, let's say for example, if we're in a very strong lead wrist position, and from this position, if we bow our lead wrist, we're so shut with the face that we're going to cause a lot of problems coming down. Because if you're very shut at the top, we must get the club face to open in the downswing in order for the club to get into a neutral position and in order for the golf club to actually pop up in the air. So we're gonna have a lot of bad swing faults from improper kind of coaching and improper tips, because if we get into a strong lead wrist position and even add more wrist cup, we're so shut that we might even have to early extend and back out of it to actually help the golf club in the air. So we're gonna have a lot of bad swing faults come into our system. We might even come out of our posture, but more importantly, if we don't have the correct matchups with our wrist and our grip, we're gonna lack club head speed and we're going to lack distance. Why do we lack club head speed? Because in order for us to get the golf club to release towards the target, we must have a neutral club face position. So what I'm trying to get at is that at the top of your backswing, cupped wrist position and bowed lead wrist position is not right or wrong relative to your grip. It could be right or it could be wrong, but one thing is universal in the golf swing. Your club face is king. I think we could all agree with that. So it doesn't matter if you're cupped, we could still be shut with the cupped wrist position. We could be open with the bowed wrist position, and it depends on your grip and how you match it up. So I'm gonna talk about how do we match it up and how do we get into a neutral club face position. I think that's number one. So I think what we wanna do is that grab an alignment stick or grab a golf club and place it at this 45-degree angle. So what you wanna do is once you get into your setup position, grip the golf club as normal and just get into a very, very good grip position, just like you would do. Don't try to fix your grip right now. Just try to get into the same grip that you have. Then from this position, what you want to do is, let me grab my personal grip, and from this position, we're not going to rotate into your takeaway position. Just make sure that we get this golf club in our hand to match the golf club at that slight 45-degree angle on the ground. So in my position right here, because I have a pretty neutral grip, you can see that with my neutral grip, if I get into that 45-degree angle, my lead wrist is pretty flat. So whatever you see in this 45-degree angle, this lead wrist position, that's what you should maintain to the top of your backswing. Then you can see that my club face is in a very, very neutral position. And that's because I have a very, very neutral grip and I trained for years to get into that neutral position. So let's say, for example, if you have a strong grip, so if your left hand for a right-handed golfer is on top, if your leading hand is on top, from this position, if I get into that same position with the 45-degree angle, I'm gonna have a lot of wrist cup. As you can see here, if you're very strong and get into that 45-degree angle, you're gonna have a lot of cup in your wrist. But that does not mean that we're gonna be open at the top because we're in a strong position. So from this position, cupped wrist, and now if I maintain this cupped wrist position to the top of my backswing, yes, my wrist is cupped, but because I had a strong grip, now the club face is pretty neutral. It might even be slightly shut. So let's say, for example, if you do it the other way around, if you have a very weak grip, from this position, if I get into that same 45-degree angle, I have a lot of bow in my wrist. So if I maintain this bowed wrist position to the top, now my club face is pretty neutral with the bowed wrist, and that's because I had a weak grip position. So the way you could get that matchup with your grip, your wrist angles, and the club face at the top of your backswing is with this 45-degree alignment stick. And if you do this position right here one more time, Just get into that 45-degree angle, match this golf club in your hand with this 45-degree angle club or alignment stick on the ground, and whatever you see down here with your lead wrist, that's what you should see at the top of your backswing. They will be in a much neutral position. So let's talk about if I get into a position where if I have, let's say, a strong grip, but let's say, for example, with that strong grip, like I mentioned, I have to have a little bit of cup in my lead wrist. But for example, if I always thought that a cupped wrist position is a bad position, I would try to get it into a strong grip because that's what I'm used to, and then I'll try to bow it to the top. So if I get it bowed up to the top, and from this position, if I try to release it, it's gonna go so left and so low. We're gonna get our body just not because we want to think about it and not because it's shut, we want to open it up. Just subconsciously, our body will try to get the club face to be a little bit more neutral. So we might even come out of our posture. So let me show you the speed and the distance difference from a strong grip position, but one is going to be from a bowed position and one's going to be with a cupped position. So let me go with bow first. If I bow it to the top with a strong grip, notice how I'm very shut. Now from this position, I just made my normal golf swing and it went very, very low. So because it went low, I'm not gonna get the carry distance, so the distance is not gonna be there, but let's focus on the club speed, which is 84.9 miles per hour. Now from this position, I'm gonna get into that same strong grip position, but now I'm gonna cup my wrist. Now from this position, let me see the speed. You can see that now my speed is at around 92.2 miles per hour. So it's a big jump. And the only reason why it's a big jump is because I have a neutral club face. So if I have a neutral club face, I could swing the golf club forward without manipulating the face coming down because I have enough loft on the face so I could just swing it through. If I'm way shut, I have to do something with my body to get it into a neutral position, which is going to be very, very hard because the downswing happens within like 0.5 seconds. So in today's lesson video, the most important part is do the homework, get this alignment stick or this golf club on a 45-degree angle with your personal grip, match the golf club with the alignment stick on the ground, see what your lead wrist position looks like, and then that's the position you want to get to the top. Then from that position, we're in a neutral position, so it's a lot easier to get all those good movements into your golf swing. Because if you struggle with certain movements, it might be because your club face position at the top. So let's try to get that neutral club face with the correct matchup with the wrist, and don't be afraid to get into cupped wrist position or bowed wrist position because one is not good, one is not bad. It depends on your grip. So let's try to get into that part of your golf swing to be in a very good position, ideal position. And I'm going to continue to make a lot of these videos about swing faults that aren't actually swing faults. There's a lot of myths about the golf swing in my opinion, and people are so afraid to do something. They're afraid to cast the golf club. So because what happens is that if they're afraid to cast the golf club, the wrist angles are never going to naturally go out. They're going to hang on forever, and that's an issue on its own. So I believe that every swing fault, the motion itself is actually not a fault. The motion we need, but the motion itself happens too early or too late, so it becomes a fault. But I think so many people are afraid to do some stuff in the golf swing that we don't have any freedom and we can't even swing the golf club forward. We're just very timid to do certain movements. So I'm going to make a lot of videos within the next couple months talking about swing faults and how to actually use those swing faults into your favor and how it's actually not a swing fault. So if you guys like the lesson video, please like and subscribe to help my channel grow. And for in-person or online lessons, I'll leave all the information in the description below. Thanks guys.